The Quran contains 114 chapters, but its entire theological framework rests on the very first one, Surah Al-Fatihah. Comprising exactly 25 words, this opening chapter operates as a structural matrix, establishing the foundation for the 113 chapters that follow. Classical scholars refer to it as Al-Kitab, the mother of the book. In the same way a seed contains the genetic code of an entire tree, these 7 verses hold the condensed essence of all Islamic theology, the mechanics of worship, and the historical archetypes of humanity. Its physical placement at the absolute beginning of the codified text is not an accident of chronological convenience. Historically, Al-Fatihah holds a distinct record. While earlier revelations arrived in fragments, this was the very first complete surah revealed to the Prophet Muhammad during the early Meccan period. Tradition records that its delivery was accompanied by a celestial event. A heavenly gate opened for the first time since the universe's creation, and an angel descended specifically to deliver these words. God refers to this chapter directly as al-Sabul Mathani, or the 7 oft-repeated. In Islamic jurisprudence, it is a non-negotiable liturgical sequence, required to be recited at least 17 times every single day across the obligatory prayers. The arrival of Al-Fatihah provided a specific vocabulary and logic to navigate the entire Islamic paradigm. To engage with the text is to engage with this specific linguistic sequence. The surah opens with a philosophy of initiation, the Basmala, Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim, or in the name of Allah, the entirely merciful, the especially merciful. The phrase begins with the Arabic letter ba, a preposition that actively denotes isti'ana, the explicit seeking of divine assistance and companionship. By initiating an action with this specific phrasing, a believer applies a kind of spiritual alchemy. Mundane acts like eating or traveling become conscious acts of worship. The Arabic root letters R-H-M signify mercy and the physical womb, forming 2 divine names. Ar-Rahman, on the intensive Fa'alan scale, represents a vast, all-encompassing radius of mercy blanketing all creation. Ar-Rahim, on the permanent Fa'il scale, denotes specific, ongoing compassion reserved for believers. You have 2 distinct weights. One establishes a universal blanket of mercy for every atom in existence, while the other provides highly targeted, continuous care for those who seek it out. These precise linguistic structures force the intellect to acknowledge a creator whose infinite capacity for compassion precedes all other attributes. Verse 2 moves from the nature of God to the nature of reality. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin. The term alhamd is structurally distinct from the word shukr, which means a transactional gratitude for a specific favor. By attaching the definite article al, hamd becomes an absolute, all-encompassing praise. It is offered purely in recognition of God's intrinsic, objective perfection. The verse then identifies God as Rabb. This translates poorly to the English word Lord. A Rabb is an active sustainer, a sovereign who continuously nurtures and guides a thing toward its ultimate perfection. He is the sustainer of alamin, the worlds. Etymologically, alamin is linked to the word alama, meaning a sign. The cosmos is framed as a vast collection of indicators, all pointing back to the sustainer keeping them intact. This structural framework shows how these opening lines establish the first 2 pillars of Islamic monotheism. Verse 2 locks in Tawhid al-Rububiyyah, the oneness of lordship. Verse 1 locks in Tawhid al-Asma was-Sifat, the oneness of his names and attributes. In merely 2 verses, the text maps the objective reality of God's absolute perfection and his sustained sovereignty over every atom of the universe. But an entirely merciful God could be misinterpreted as a God without consequences. Verse 4 provides the necessary theological counterweight, Maliki Yaum ad-Din, master of the day of judgment. The term Malik denotes unyielding, absolute ownership and supreme kingly authority. On this day, no other sovereignty exists. And the word deen in this specific context carries dual implications. It refers to an inescapable, calculated recompense and the terminal reality of final judgment. After the profound warmth of the opening verses, the reciter is hit with the absolute, inescapable weight of cosmic accountability. This sudden interruption of mercy ensures the believer's psyche remains perfectly suspended. They must exist exactly halfway between absolute hope in God's compassion and healthy fear of God's justice. This equilibrium sets up verse 5, Iyaka nabudu wa iyaka nasta'in. You alone we worship, and you alone we ask for help. This is the rhetorical and linguistic heartbeat of the entire 25-word matrix. Up to this point, God has been spoken about in the third person. He is the merciful. He is the master. But here, the grammar suddenly ruptures. The reciter shifts to addressing God directly in the second person, you. This is an advanced grammatical device known as Iltifat. The spiritual mechanics here are precise. Having completed their objective praise and acknowledged their final judgment, the servant is pulled directly into the intimacy of the divine presence. It proves the surah is not a static monologue to be read passively. It is engineered as a dynamic, real-time dialogue between the creator and the created. The Iltifat physically forces the reciter out of the role of an observer, placing them into an active and direct spiritual encounter. The exact word order of verse 5 is equally critical. It relies on the concept of Taqdim, deliberately placing the object of a sentence before the verb. In standard Arabic, you would say, Nabudu iyaka, we worship you. But the Quran physically slides the word iyaka to the front of the sentence. This syntactical maneuver creates what is called hasr, an unbreakable linguistic restriction. This inversion radically changes the meaning. It goes from a casual, we worship you, which grammatically leaves room to worship other things, to the absolute exclusivity of, it is you and only you that we worship. This restriction establishes the third and final pillar of monotheism, Tawhid al-Uluhiyyah, the oneness of worship. God alone is worthy of devotion. But the text immediately pairs this declaration of exclusive servitude, na'ubadu, with a desperate plea for reliance, nasta'in. Verse 5 locks the believer into a specific paradox. Total submission to God is required, but it is impossible without the explicit ongoing assistance of God. Having praised God and declared absolute loyalty, the dialogue ends. The final 3 verses transition entirely into a singular petition from the servant, a request for guidance. Ihdina Sirat al-Mustaqim. Guide us to the straight path. In Arabic, guidance is usually shown to or towards a path using prepositions. Here, those prepositions are deliberately omitted. Omitting the preposition upgrades the request. The reciter is not merely asking to be intellectually shown the path. They are pleading for the physical and spiritual ability to walk it and remain steadfast. And the path itself, the Mustaqim, is specific. It traces back to the triliteral root QWM. To clarify exactly what this path looks like, verse 7 maps out a complete spiritual taxonomy of the human condition. It rigidly divides humanity into 3 distinct trajectories. The first trajectory is the path of the favored, Anamta Alahim. This group represents the harmony of ilm and amal, knowledge combined with sincere action. Historically, this archetype represents the prophets and the truthful who learned the divine reality and physically implemented it in their lives. The second trajectory warns against those who earned wrath, al-Maghdub alayhim. Here, we see knowledge without action. This is the corruption of intention. It represents those who possess the intellectual truth, but due to arrogance or worldly desire, willfully reject it, hoard it, or distort it. The third and final trajectory is those who are astray, ad-dalin. This is action without knowledge. This archetype represents the tragedy of ignorant zeal. It is the individual who possesses a sincere emotional desire to worship, but acts outside the boundaries of divine truth. The text deliberately repeats the negative Arabic particle la, meaning nor, between these 2 failures. This grammatically proves that arrogant rejection and ignorant zeal occupy separate categories of failure. Zooming out, we see the structural symmetry of this 25-word matrix. It begins with the perfection of the creator, shifts to the accountability of the created, and concludes with a definitive map for human survival. The theological density of this text is why Islamic jurisprudence mandates its recitation. This exact sequence is a non-negotiable requirement for a valid prayer, repeated by every practicing Muslim at least 17 times a day. It acts as a continuous psychological elixir. It forces the believer to hit pause and actively recalibrate their mind toward gratitude and absolute purpose. Through daily repetition, a Muslim's aqidah, or core creed, is continuously aligned, guarded against the twin corruptions of intention and knowledge. Al-Fatihah serves as the opening of the human heart to the mercy, justice, and exact guidance of its creator. It provides the framework for the entire Islamic experience.